Hello, everyone. My name is JT, the Talking Head. You are the audience, and you are listening to episode 12 of the Masters of Matinee podcast, a collaborative show between content creators who all share a great love for cinema and a passion for physical media. Our co host today is Teo the Terminurtle, and we are going to be analytically dissecting Richard Linklater's masterpiece of a film, Boyhood. Just a quick warning to you, this episode contains every spoiler imaginable for the film, so it is highly suggested that you view the film before listening to this week's episode if you haven't already. That being stated, the Masters of Matinee would like to remind you to please silence all cell phones and do enjoy the show. Well, look who finally came back with his cigarettes and milk. Teo the Terminurtle. How are you today, Dad?
I'm doing very well, thank you very much.
You reminded me of from SpongeBob. I remember chocolate. I
hated
hated
the chocolate. I hated it. Yeah.
it.
I thought it came back. No?
I mean, it's just a running joke at this point. It's probably
Oh,
how you're
so
gonna get introduced from
okay.
now on.
So does that mean that every time the podcast ends, I just split and like take off until the next one?
I guess so. I guess so. Like when we start doing videos, like you're just gonna have to start chain smoking on them when we start doing video versions of the show. Just
I
gonna be a thing.
do I do own a pretty nice collection of tobacco pipes. So we can definitely have that kind of be yeah.
Nice, nice. So unlike most episodes of Masters of Matinee where we choose like a starting topic and then it just kind of goes how it goes, Teo and I have a really pretty solid topic in mind today that we're going to jump right into. We recently both watched a movie. Teo has talked about this endlessly on previous episodes, and he spoke so highly about this film that I had to go see it myself. And that film is Richard Linklater's Slacker. Not Slacker. Teo, you need to see Slacker. That
You
film is Richard Linklater's Before trilogy. No, not Before trilogy, but I hear we need to see that too. That film is Richard Linklater's Dazed and Confused. No, not that one either. You
all
pick.
right, all right, all right.
You boys watching Dazed and Confused? Be a lot cooler if you did. All right, all right, all right. No, but he did just pick the 4K of that up today. So once he watches it, we're gonna have to get his little mini review of it here on the show.
Oh yeah.
But no, actually, the movie we're talking about is Richard Linklater's Boyhood, the
Bow, bow, bow.
the magnum opus of Richard Linklater. Oh, and you did that, so let's try this again. Richard Linklater's Boyhood.
Do we have that now? Do we have like a
Yeah, I have a soundboard.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Hey, this is what happens whenever I ask Teo something and he's already ran out for the coffee and the or for the cigarettes and the milk.
Oh, I think you cut out again. Oh, crickets.
Yeah. Crickets and
What That's awesome. What we need to do too is just kinda take different clips from the, like, podcast. So we need to, like, make, like, different, like, catch phrases and stuff.
yeah, we could do that. That'd be great. So we are talking about Richard Linklater's Boyhood. Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's a great
Phenomenal
film.
film.
Phenomenal film. As I'd said before, Teo has seen this. It was the first ever Criterion film that he ever bought uh, before he even collected Criterion. So, Teo, what was it about Boyhood that initially like drew you to it?
So this movie came out in 2014, I believe, which would have made me 16 years old. And I remember watching the trailer when it dropped. And one, I mean, just of course, the concept that they filmed this piece by piece in the course of a couple years past a decade. Um, but then just I have always really enjoyed movies about childhood, movies about growing up, movies about that experience. My favorite movie of all time is Stand By Me. Um, so with that context, just a film like Boyhood just screams like this is a Mateo type of um picture. And I remember I watched it. I didn't watch it in the movies. I watched it when it came out on DVD. I went down to my local library and actually picked up a copy. Um, and I just fell in love with this film instantly. I thought it was incredible. I really liked what the filmmaker was trying to express, and it's something that I found very relatable, even though I didn't have a lot of the experiences that this character does in the film, which praise God, because this guy goes through some crap. Um, but uh, but I just found that experience of childhood and growing up. I just connected with that. And yeah.
Yeah, what was the main character's name, the kid's name again? I forgot already.
Oh shit, you put me on the spot. uh, Let me go grab the Blu-ray.
Going and grabbing the Blu-ray instead of looking it up on his computer. I love it. It's a dying art, folks. It's a dying art.
Oh, Mason Jr.
Mason Jr. Yeah, Mason. So Mason, yeah, he went through the fucking ringer, eh? Like,
Absolutely.
deadbeat dad after deadbeat dad, and then his first deadbeat dad turned out to be like actually like the actually the coolest dude ever.
Mhm.
They just wrong timing, I guess, for him. But that, yeah, like I don't understand how you could have such shit luck to that your mother marries two seemingly normal dudes, nice dudes that turn out to be raging alcoholics.
Just wanted to confirm we are getting like 100% like into spoilers.
Yes, this is a very
Okay.
spoilery.
Okay.
Yes. So if you guys have not seen Boyhood yet, I will let you know it is streaming. If you don't own it, it is streaming on Paramount Plus Showtime, I believe.
Mhm.
And if you don't want to stream it, it's available in the Criterion Collection, and also Arrow Video just released it through 4K. But I think
Which I
that's a
may have to pick up also. Yeah.
yeah, I think that, but I think that's a region B, so you would have to import it or buy it from somewhere like Orbit or Orbit DVD or Diabolic DVD if they have any in stock. From what I remember, they actually released a pretty cool box set of it, so you
Oh,
might want to
nice.
pick that up regardless. But so yeah, if you don't want if you're interested in Boyhood and you don't want to hear spoilers for it, then turn this episode off now. Kill our watch time on YouTube and the other platforms. It's fine. We understand. But yeah,
Oh, but
so
then whenever you do watch it, then come right back here.
yes, right back here
There you
to
go.
get our thoughts and views and on this movie because this movie cuts deep. So first off,
Absolutely.
let's kind of explore what Boyhood is. Um, this is a film that is it's been done unlike anything else in Hollywood ever. Um, it is a film that took 12 years to make. It follows this boy from kindergarten to graduating high school. And when Teo originally like pitched it to me when he told me what it was, he made it kind of sound like it was a documentary. I thought it was a documentary, and then I turned the movie on and Ethan Hawke shows up and I'm like, this ain't no documentary. And I was pleasantly surprised. And then the more I read into it and realized that, yeah, like once a month, every single year they got together and recorded scenes uh for 12 years. I was like, how do you get something done like that in Hollywood? And it's like Linklater has done that similarly with the Before trilogy, where he made those three films. Like the first one was in the late 90s, and then like 2004, and then 2013 for the last one. But this is the same continuous film. It's almost a 3 hour picture. That's the same cast coming back and back over 12 years. And to me, that is a feat in filmmaking. It's a feat of cinema.
I did a little bit of post watch t- t- digging, And what I found out is that this movie is actually very intensely inspired by Richard Linklater's life. This movie is a lot more like autobiographical than I originally believed, which is interesting because I still don't know this 100%. But I'm very curious, like, what did the scripts look like when they
That's
started?
That's something that I, because it had to be adaptable. It had to be adaptable and to account for the change of modern technology and society changing over 12 years, right? So like
Mhm,
for example, in the very first like year that they're shooting at the beginning of the movie, the kids are laying in bed with their mother and they're reading Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the book of it, and then cut to a few years later, they're at a release for Harry Potter Half Blood Prince, which is the sixth book. So it's
mhm,
like there's no way that Linklater would have known in 2001 when he started filming that Harry Potter would have lasted that many books or that long. So he couldn't have put
right,
that in the he couldn't have put that in the actual script. And then like
right.
cell phone usage and stuff, he couldn't have put that in the script because he in 2001 cell phones were way, you know, you had your little Nokia brick phone, you know, and then by the end of it, Mason's got a freaking iPhone. Like,
Yeah.
so
Well, and they did talk about how as they would come back year after year, they would kind of talk about what the past year had been like and different things that they had sort of experienced and gone through, especially with the kids. Um, but I think that there was like a core of a story there because the director talked about how his parents were divorced. He was raised by his mom, and he had witnessed her get married and divorce again as time kind of went on. That occurred a couple of times, and then his mom went back and got her college d degree and became a teacher, which is a, you know, plot point, throughout the film. So, like, I think that, like, the core was there, but yes, no, I absolutely love how this movie was a time capsule, especially because I think yeah. So when this movie came out, I was about 16 years old, so I was only a couple years behind, like, person that plays the key kid in the film. And yeah, like in the beginning, watching them play watching them watch Dragon Ball, just like those key things from like childhood, and specifically like the childhood that I grew up in. There's a scene where he's playing a Game Boy. And it's kind of like all those key things. Just I think that's also like what makes me connect with this film in such like a deep. You know what I mean? Yeah.
yeah, I think I connected with it as well in the same way because I was in um kindergarten, or no, I was in preschool when 9/11 happened in 2001, and then Mason's in
Mhm.
kindergarten, so I was a year behind Mason, and they're mentioning that, and the movie does get very political and stuff. Like his dad, it mentions how his dad's super liberal, and so throughout the
Yeah.
years, like it showed, like in the beginning of it, you know, he's like vote for anybody but Bush, and then,
Mhm.
you know, years later, they're ripping John Kerry signs out of yards for, was it John Kerry? Who ran against
Uh,
Obama? Mitt
it
Romney?
was, John McCain.
John McCain. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
ripping John McCain signs out of yards and putting Obama signs down in yards and stuff. And it's just like, you know, it's like little stuff like that that, like you said, it's a really good word for it. Time capsule. It's a
Mm,
time capsule of our society at that point, and in a way, it's a time capsule of you and our generation, our formative years, uh,
oh, absolutely.
and how we grew into be the people that we are today. Mason was influenced by the same things that we were playing, you know, Halo on the Xbox,
Yeah.
or the Wii Sports or whatever, boxing and watching Dragon Ball Z, playing his Game Boy, reading the Harry Potter books. And it's like all of that stuff that Linklater chose. Like he could have made a semi autobiographical film and put it in the 19, you know, 70s or 60s or whatever, whenever the fuck he grew up,
Mhm.
and made it a full film and shot it over the course of a year and a half like a normal feature would be shot.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He chose to uh, have the same kid grow up. He chose to actually capture this kid's childhood and actually capture the growth of society around this child as that kid grew up. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating. And it's probably one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in a film.
Yeah. Plus, every time I watch this film, I completely forget it takes place in Houston, which is where I am currently, and I forget that, but yeah, like, there's a point where they go, t to yeah, they go to an Astros game, and they go to a game when the Astros are wearing the uniforms that, like, I remember them wearing the very first time I went to one of their games.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, Linklater's from Texas, so like a big portion of his films take place in Texas, which is why I think that
Yeah.
you and like I've recommended a few other Linklater films for Teo to watch. Slacker and Dazed and Confused both take place in Texas. Um,
You know who else is from, Texas?
um, there's a lot of people from Texas, but who?
Wes Anderson.
Really? I did not know that.
He he grew up about 20 minutes from where, like, like, am currently.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's very neat. Um, but yeah, I mean, he captures Texas in all of his films very like in a way that makes you like want to move to Texas. You know, it's very endearing. You can tell that he has this love for his home state, this pride of being a Texan, and that knowing a few Texans myself, that's something that I have come to see is that there is no pride in the world like Texan pride.
No, there's honestly not, man.
They say, when people look at Americans overseas and they see our flags and our proud patriotism and stuff, our patriotic nature, they think it might be a little much, but I just say, hey, ain't none of us as bad as the Texans with that stuff.
Which I love that this movie actually includes the freaking Texas pledge.
Right.
Um, that caught me off guard because I haven't heard that pledge in almost 10 years probably, and I was like, "Oh shit, I pledge allegiance to Texas once." Like
You want to know something else that I thought was really crazy about this movie?
was it?
So scheduling in Hollywood is wild. It's hard to get actors scheduled, obviously.
Mm,
So they got not only all these actors to come back all together every year, year after year, to not take any projects during that time period every year, but they also kept the same kid that played Mason. How freaking hard must it have been to keep a kid interested in acting? What would have happened to this film if the kid who played Mason after 2 or 3 years was like, I don't want to be an actor anymore? Or if once he hit, teenage years, if he, chose to do like a ex Disney kid type thing and have a massive spiral and get hooked on drugs or some shit, because that's how
yeah.
a lot of child actors turn out. It's like bad would it have derailed this film if that something like that had happened? Like they had to have accounted for all this stuff in order to make this movie, and it's. I want to know if there was anything like that that happened, if it like that
Yeah.
brought them close to the point of derailment.
So I didn't do like a super duper deep dive into the actual production of the film, but in the behind the scenes thing that I had watched, so they filmed for about 3 days per each year. Um, so I think that's how they were kind of like relatively able to like bring actors back. Plus, if you kind of notice, there are points where, like Ethan Hawke's character doesn't come up for like a couple of those years, and it's very like not hard to miss because it's only about like 20 minutes of like screen time where he might be gone, and then he comes back. But when you really look at like, oh, like that was 1 year, that was 1 year, there were like 2 years back to back where like he did not, come. Um, and then one thing that helped a lot is so the child that played the daughter, Samantha,
Yeah, it's
that was
Linklater's daughter. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that helps a lot. But then
Oh yeah.
also but then also with that actress too, there was like a good chunk of the film where she like did not come up, and then she comes back during his graduation party.
Yeah, she was off in college, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that honestly, that might have been accounted for maybe his daughter, his in real life was out off to college, you know, who
Mhm.
knows?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
I just think that's really cool, and it's a time capsule of these kids. It's a time capsule of society, and it's honestly a time capsule of Linklater as a filmmaker because you got to think in 12 years, Linklater had. I wonder how many films he'd made between shoots of Boyhood
That would be very I can look that up right now.
because he would have like he. You can see it in the film that you can see Linklater growing as a director and a
Oh,
writer.
absolutely.
He gets stronger
Uh,
every year.
so the production of this film was from 2002 to 2014. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He directed 10 full length projects during the production of this film.
So he had a lot of practice in between shoots, and you can and it
Mm.
shows. It shows. It's really interesting. Really interesting to see that.
Yeah.
You know, another thing that I was talking to Des about this. We were because we watched it together, and she absolutely was astounded by it. Um, the only thing that I can akin this to at all, the only thing that's anything like it is a sitcom. It's the only other medium of entertainment that if a sitcom runs long enough, you are going to see the actors who play these characters grow like you did in Boyhood
Oh yeah.
in a much
Um,
longer form. Full House, for example. Full House
yeah.
ran like 8 9 seasons over like over a decade, and you got to see Michelle grow from a baby to a like almost preteen, and you got to see Stephanie grow from a like a little tiny kid, like 5 years old, all the way to like 16, and like it
Mhm.
you got to see those kids grow up, and it was over a much longer period of time. But in this movie, it was condensed, and it shows the passing of time very interestingly as well. Mason's hair is one thing that they always use for to show the passing of time, and then the technology in the background and stuff is another thing. But like sometimes you just don't know exactly when it's jumping from year to year. You have to use a lot of context clues. That's something that I also found really interesting is because they don't use like your typical passage of time where it would be like like a slate black screen with the words like 1 year later or whatever.
Right.
It just
Yeah.
organically passes time, and I thought that was very intriguing how they did that because it caught you off guard for a while, and you had to really pay attention to the context of the scene.
Yeah, so I think that this current watch that I did was the one where I could kind of tell the most, and what was kind of the, like, telltale sign to me was his, like, haircuts, and it's because there's a point especially or there's a point during the beginning years where he cuts his hair completely, and it's not him that wants to do it. It's, one of his stepdads,
Yeah, it's
and because I
his
knew
first stepdad.
yeah, but because I knew that that was such, like, a crucial, I guess, kind of pivotal point, I paid attention to his hair throughout the entire film, and that is kind of the, like, key sort of telltale of, like, when the years change. But yeah, no, I would say the first 2 times that I watched this, I, like, could not tell. I just, like, blinked and he went from being, like, 10 to being, like, you know, 20. Just to your point about, sitcoms, yeah, like, the best example of that I've seen is with, A Boy Meets World. Like, that TV show starts when they're in kindergarten and you see, like, their prom night, you see Corey propose, you see their wedding, like, you see all of that, and it's just yeah.
Yeah, Boy Meets World is probably even better example than Full House. Because yeah, I forgot that Boy Meets World started when they were in kindergarten. You get to see them all the way up through college and
Mhm.
everything, and then there was a continuation of Girl Meets World where you get to see them as adults and stuff. So that's probably even
That's really true.
a much better comparison because you really got to see Corey and Topanga grow. Um, that it's just such an intriguing thing. I do want to pivot here a little bit to talk about something. I'm going to give a trigger warning. We're going to be talking about alcoholism and
Mm,
abuse, because
yeah.
this Mason's story has a very heavy undertone of three key themes, which are alcoholism, neglect, and abandonment. Um, and neglect, if not right out, straight out abuse. So
Mhm,
he's got, he starts off with, it's just him, his sister, and his mom. Dad left him. You don't really know what happened between his mom and dad. He's not made out to be like he's kind of demonized by their mother, but then whenever you get to finally meet him in the film, his dad, who is played by Ethan Hawke, um, he doesn't seem bad. He seems like he's actually trying, like he's putting his best foot forward and
yeah.
trying, but he's like consistently demonized by their mother, and that's something that kind of runs throughout the entirety of the film. Like she's like the bitter ex-wife that hates him, because he left her high and dry when she needed him the most, and that's understandable. um but she goes from like marriage to marriage. She's like always searching because his mother's story is something that is really interesting too. She's very jaded, and so much so to where I feel like as time goes on, most of the problems that occur with these kids is because she's neglectful, in a way.
Mm, yeah.
So she's in college, going for her teacher's degree or psychological, like go trying to become a psych professor or whatever, and
Mhm,
she ends up marrying her psych professor. And this guy seems pretty normal out first. He doesn't really show any signs of anything bad. And then as the years go by, after about, 1 or 2 years, you start to see that he starts drinking pretty heavy. And he there's even a scene where he takes the kids golfing. He takes Mason and his stepbrother golfing. And after they're done golfing, he like pulls into a liquor store and he like tells him, he's like, "This is just in case we have guests come over." And
mhm,
like Mason's stepbrother looks at him, he's like, "We never have guests come over." And so, that's your first sign, and then eventually he starts drinking more and more and more, and it kind of reaches a boiling point when or starts to simmer whenever, like you had mentioned before, Mason had his haircut. The guy made him take have a get a haircut and shaved his head completely. He had these beautiful long locks of hair, and he shaved them off. Um, and then he, it there was a scene where he's drinking pretty heavily, and they come home, and Mason's mom is laying on the floor in the garage crying. And you find out later, a few years later, that is because he slammed her head against the wall. And then they're all eating dinner together, and uh, the stepdad throws a glass at Mason, and that was like the breaking point for Mama. But all the
mhm,
while all this stuff is going on, while he's been slowly descending into alcoholism, she's been so focused on her like schoolwork and her life, trying to get that on track, that she's not even paid attention to the fact that the kids are slowly becoming trapped by this monster who is about to blow his top at any moment. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, it was very interesting watching it this time around because I think the last time I had seen this was like my freshman year of college. So I very much viewed this from Mason's perspective. And I am not a parent now, but I am married. And my wife has two younger brothers who are teenagers, and so I feel like with this watch of the film, I kind of viewed this not as like a parent, but as like an older brother to Mason, and instead of putting myself in his perspective. I was kind of like w- watching him from like a more like protective, you know, kind of point of view. And so within that, yeah, I feel like the mistakes that his mother had made, although of course she was trying, and one of the things that the director talked about is a lot of people who grew up with a teen mom or a mom that gave birth kind of at that point, they say like me and my mom like grew up together, and that was like really like the point that he wanted to make. And the director said that there's a lot of beauty in that, which there absolutely is, but there are also a lot of challenges I think that come with that.
Yeah, that's definitely very true. And it's all about maturity.
Mm,
I think that's the biggest like key point, the sticking point of Boyhood is is what does it take to make a person in life come to a point of maturity. Um, as you said, he's growing up with his mom, so his mom is still making mistakes. It's
mhm.
interesting. It's an interesting character study because his mom married this alcoholic professor that was her professor, and then a few years later, after they divorce, she marries her student.
Yeah.
So she's repeating the cycle from a different position. She has matured. The student has become the master, and now she has matured and is repeating the cycle from a different perspective. And but there's still similarities in that she's attracted to this guy who is at the time not an alcoholic, and you don't get to see what happens in their marriage that turns her former student to alcohol, because when they first meet, he's not drinking a lot, and
Yeah.
he's very supportive and loving of Mason. He's there for them. He's present in their life. He's an ex military, and he's all around what I would see as a good guy. And I looked at this guy and I'm like, oh man, this is cool. Like maybe this will form Mason to be like a really cool person or whatever. And he got Mason his first camera, got him into photography. And he and then as the years go on, as Mason is maturing himself and he's going out and learning and making mistakes of his own, and he's getting into drinking and he's getting into smoking pot, he he's coming home late and everything, and he's ending up seeing that as his absence from the family is happening, this other guy that mama's married is starting to become an alcoholic. So I'm, we like I said, we don't get to see what happened between his mom and stepdaddy number two's relationship that sent him spiraling down that path. But I gotta
Mm,
wonder if what it was, because he wasn't like portrayed as being even remotely alcoholic when they first met. You know what I mean?
yeah. You gotta wonder if it's just her. No, I'm kidding.
Well, no, that is an interesting point though.
Yeah.
That's that like, and I'm not saying that to be misogynist or anything.
Mhm.
I'm trying to look at this analytically. Um, I'm not saying that in a way that women will drive you to alcoholism. Women will drive you
No, no,
crazy.
right. No, yeah, I mean, I was just joking.
I'm trying to deconstruct it and be like, well, first her mistake of neglect was that she was so focused um on getting her degree. And then
Mhm.
obviously later in life, later in her second marriage, you can see that they are struggling financially. They have a
Yeah.
house that is way bigger than they need, and it's the economy. It shows the economy, how the economy has crushed them, because when they bought that house, which was around the time that after the housing market crashed, when everything was dirt cheap. um,
Mhm.
how the economy has exploded since, and now everything, inflation had gone up and everything throughout the Obama presidency and everything like that, after the housing market crash, when the economy was taking a recovery period. And it shows their descent from seemingly upper middle class to lower middle class, but they're also still in this really nice like suburban home. but that they can barely afford. So I mean, that's probably something that drove him to alcoholism because she's a college professor, he's a corrections officer at a prison, and
Mhm.
but she's probably so focused on building her job and paying the bills and doing this and that. It shows that she's selling stuff online, like selling handmade jewelry and stuff online.
Right.
Um, that she's
Yeah.
probably so sucked into that that she's again neglecting her kids. She doesn't notice when, or she does notice, but she doesn't seem to be super phased when Mason comes home and he's been drinking and smoking pot. She doesn't have a talk with him. She doesn't be a parent about it. She's just taken aback and then she lets it go.
Mhm.
Um, and then she's probably neglecting her marriage as well. And again, I don't say that to be misogynist. I'm just making an
No, right.
observation as to what could
Yeah.
have caused that. I mean, anybody who's trapped in a marriage that is seemingly loveless could turn to something like alcohol or drugs to numb that pain. You're seemingly losing your family. So I do have sympathy for the stepdaddy number two, and he never was really abusive, other than like, you know, he was kind of a jackass.
Mhm.
He called
Yeah.
Mason gay and stuff like that. But he wasn't like, I mean, maybe verbally abusive, but he wasn't like, he never like threw a glass at him or smashed mama's head into a
Right.
wall. At least not that what we saw.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like this time around, I caught a conversation with the mom in a different kind of way, and it's whenever they all go out to eat towards the end, and she tells them that she's gonna move once again, and she's moving in with her mom, and she says like this will be great for me, and her kids ask her, "What about Christmas? Like where are we gonna go?" And to me, that was a good point. I was like, "Yeah, like what about like I get that your kids are going off to college, but you're not necessarily like done being a parent. Like you're you're done parenting, but you are always gonna be like a parent." So I just thought that was kind of interesting that the mom was kind of taking this chance to and she explicitly states it at the beginning of the film where she says, "I went from being a person's kid to being a person's parent." And I think that kind of drove a lot of her choices throughout the course of the film, and then at the end of the film, whenever she's like, "Oh, like, now you're going on off to college, what's up next? It's gonna be my, like, funeral." Like, she's, like, really kind of
Mhm.
struggling with just, like, when does her life belong to her?
Right.
Because in her eyes, her life has belonged to her kids and her job and her spouses, and I just thought that was I thought that was interesting, especially because of how close this is to the director's own story. I would be very curious to see like a on-screen interview with his mom about this production and how the mom character is um portrayed and whatnot.
Well, that goes back to, that was another thing that I wanted to bring up is her little freak out on Mason at the end. The
Mhm.
Where she's saying my life has been a series of moments, a series of events. Like I got married, I got divorced, I had kids, I went to school, I got married, I got divorced, I graduated, I got married, I got divorced. My kids are leaving me. I'm an empty nester. What's next? What next is my fucking funeral. Um,
Yeah.
that shows to me, and it's the inopportune time in which she chose this breakdown that showed to me that Mama was not yet fully matured or grown. Mason was taking this step into college, and yes, mom should is going to be sad about it, but she like fully has this meltdown, and it's because Mason, like, she's like, I expected you to be happy about going to college, but I didn't expect you to be so happy about it, like so happy about leaving me and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And it's like she gets like jealous of him. or something
Yeah.
because he's getting ready to go off and live his own life in college and start his life, and he's not going to be trapped with having to raise kids and give up his life, you know. And
Mhm.
like again, it's an interesting character study of his mother, and I think overall the the story of his mom is just as important as his story itself.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
because it all goes back to he was growing as she was growing, and when that happened, I just kind of looked and it made me be reminiscent of a conversation that he had at that queso place where they were visiting. Was it Sam? Is his sister's name Sam?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, at her college, and he was with his ex girlfriend. So he's talking about how everyone around them is is just as confused. Nobody has it figured out. Nobody
Mm.
knows what the fuck's going on. They're all still trying to find it out.
Mhm.
The from 18 to 80, they're
Yeah.
all still trying to figure out life. And it really shows that with his mom because she's like her life is obviously not going the way she wants it to, and she's got to find out how to live her life and how to be
Yeah.
fulfilled without being a mom, and how to keep her own time and track of her own self, be her own keeper, and all that. I just think it's a really interesting study of motherhood. I mean, this movie could have just as easily been called Motherhood as well as
That was
Boyhood.
a that was a literal direct quote from the director. Yeah. Well, and it's so crazy because then to juxtapose, his dad kind of ends on a good note. Like,
Yeah, yeah, dude. His dad.
okay.
Uh, we've talked about. Unless, do you have anything else to say about the whole abusive father situation and the whole repeating mistakes?
Not really, except for I do wonder how that played into Nason's life because there are multiple points in the movie where multiple people, both his abusive stepdads, but also people that care a lot about him, like his boss at the cafe, and his school teacher. They tell him like you need to like try, like you have that like talent, but you're not applying yourself, and that is what splits the people that get where they want to go and the people that stay stuck. And I think that again because I'm watching this film currently from a more protective point of view, and I have had those like word for word exact same talks with my wife's brothers. And it's like, yeah, dude, like you need to apply yourself more. Like you're not just gonna, skate by throughout your life and then end up where you want to be. Like if you want to break this chain that you're kind of in right now, then you need to really push. But I do wonder if having those abusive dads, if having people kind of tear him down constantly, if that is the reason why he never really pushed that much because he was maybe pushed too hard when he was a kid.
Yeah, that's a good point. Eh, I think he was pushed hard by the wrong people.
Mhm.
Um, the people in his life that needed to be there to support and push him forward were too busy with their own lives. They were too much in their own world. His
Yeah.
mom with her college and her career, his dad with trying to make music and do whatever. And then by the time his dad was ready to settle down, he chose to settle down and start a family with another person instead of returning to his actual family or his original family, you know?
Well, and to be honest, I don't know that the mom would have even taken him had he tried.
No, doubtful. But
Yeah.
he could have moved closer or just
Oh, yeah.
made
Absolutely.
an effort to be more present, which later in the years he does. That's a thing that I wanted to pivot into is because we've talked about a lot of deadbeat dads, a lot of depressing daddy issues.
Mhm.
Um, his dad, for all his flaws, his biological father is actually probably the best influence that Mason had
Oh,
because
absolutely.
his
Yeah.
dad encouraged him to explore life and to
Mhm.
find the varieties of life that make it great. His dad pushed him to do these things and gave him the sage advice that he needed to move forward throughout his formative years. Even though he wasn't present, when he was present, he I felt like he made it count.
Yeah.
And that's something I feel like is not all that common in what I call weekend warrior dads, the kind of dads
Mhm.
that, they show up every weekend or every other weekend and they don't always take the time to focus on the kid. It's almost like they're just dragging the kid along to what they're doing.
And, I think in the beginning, although he did truly love his kids, I don't think he was ready to be a parent. And I think that's why he split. I think he felt like there was still something out there that he had to chase. He still wanted to make his career as a musician, work. But there is always one thing that he says in this film that has always stood out to me every single time that I watch it. And it's when he says, I became the man that your mother wanted me to be. Like I did eventually become that. She just could have been a little bit more patient. And I both get that and I disagree with it. Um I get it in the sense that like I know what he means, and there is a part of me, there is that selfish part that kind of relates. Like I have been married for almost 2 years now. I'm not prepared to be a dad. There's still more that I want to do. There's still more that me and my wife want to do. We want to travel a few places before we have kids. Um, but at the same time, like if I found out tomorrow that we were pregnant, like well, that now takes the priority in my life. And I have no problem putting those things on the back burner because a literal human being is 100% dependent on me at that point. But I know that not everybody feels that way. And even people that do agree with that logic and reasoning, words are easier said than the actions that we put into place.
We have to remember that the whole aging and maturing thing applies to dad too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um, if he had settled down and dropped all of his wild dreams when he was a kid and had Mason as a teenager, or I think he said he
Mm.
was 23 when they had him.
Yeah.
Uh, would he have gone into alcoholism too?
That's a good question.
Because there's no way to kill a life faster than crushing the dreams of a person.
Yeah, but then again, at what cost? Because I'm sure that his wife would have appreciated him toughing it out, and it's like even like his kid tells him in the film, "You would have saved me that parade of assholes." You know?
This is true until you think of the what ifs or what could be's.
Yeah.
Maybe Mason was saved by the parade of assholes, but maybe his dad became the asshole instead.
Mm,
Um, when you get jaded in life, it can really fuck with you.
yeah.
And I'm gonna get a little personal here. I'm a child of divorce. I come from a broken home. My dad left when I was 3.5 years old. Uh, I have a very good relationship with my dad now, but it was not always great. Um, I can say with utmost certainty that if my dad had, quote, toughed it out,
Mm,
we would not be we would not be how we are now. He needed a lot of
yeah.
growing. He needed to find out what his life needed in order to be the dad that I need. You can't as a child of divorce, I can safely say that I would rather be a child of divorce than to be trapped in a home with a biological mother and father that don't get along, because there's
Yeah.
so many issues that come from that. You're always around fighting. You're always around, it can cause both parents or one parent to go to drinking or drug use or whatever, and then that leads down the rabbit hole of abuse. Um, it's sad, but that's the human condition. Really, we are self-centered creatures, and we have to, at the end of the day, we have to learn how to take care of ourselves before we can properly take care of anybody else. And I think that's what this film really helps to kind of portray, that while you're seeing Mason learn what's best for him, you're also seeing people who are much older than him still learning what's best for them.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, and I definitely do think that we're coming at this film from two different perspectives because when my dad met my mom, he was bringing two kids with him from his previous marriage. And then my mom had me 2 days before she turned 21, which is a lot like the mom that was in this movie. And so my mom, by the time she was 21, was a parent of three kids, one one biological and two stepkids. So I do think when I watch this film and kind of watch the mom kind of struggle with the things that she's you know sh- struggling with, it's hard not to see my mom in that as well. Um, but at the same time, I could never watch this movie with her because she would be like, "Bitch!" Like, like my mom would definitely be screaming at the TV for a ton of this film. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, so yeah. So no, I definitely think it is very good to watch this from multiple perspectives and multiple because I do think that you like are correct in that like if it's going to damage the home to the point of no return, you know what I mean?
Yeah, dude. I think there's also so many, what ifs. What ifs, what
Mm,
could be's, coulda, shoulda, wouldas, but didn't. And
yeah.
it's stuff that we'll never know. And I think that is just such an interesting the whole film is an interesting commentary on maturity.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I love this movie. I could watch this 20 times, honestly, and probably pull a different conclusion with each time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's one of those things where perspective really dictates your view on the world. Um
Mhm.
like
Oh,
like you
absolutely.
had mentioned, we're coming at this from two different angles because we both have two different upbringings. You seemingly had the upbringing closer to Mason's first stepdad, and I don't want to get too personal, but I kind of assume that it worked out for your mom with your father, your biological father.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, see, I had the parade of assholes. Mom never married
Mm,
any of them, but they were
yeah,
boyfriends and stuff. And then when I was 16, she finally settled down and married a really wonderful man, Sam,
mhm,
who passed away unfortunately a couple of years ago. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, so I definitely relate to the "you could have saved me from the parade of assholes" remark that Mason told his dad. But at the same time, I also have to catch myself and think, well, you know, if he had stuck around, maybe, you know, if Mason's dad had stuck around, maybe he would have become the asshole. But we're running on an hour right now, my man. I want to know. Let's wrap it up here. What are your kind of final thoughts on the film Boyhood, and also what do you rate it out of 5 stars?
um, we kind of talked about this at the top of this podcast. I am relatively brand new to the Criterion collection. Um, I'm still not sure 100% what the credentials are for what constitutes being a criterion, but I can say 100% that this movie deserves um, to be in this collection. The way that I interpreted the criterion is like if the planet were to get blown up and space aliens came across like a collection of like Blu-rays, like the criterion is like the best of the best. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
it's films that are culturally important.
yeah. Um, and I don't think I've ever seen a movie more important than this film to me in the scope of the American family. Um, I think this is essential and crucial in that regard, and I have no doubt about giving this a 5 out of 5. That is just me. I think that everybody should watch this movie. I don't think everybody would enjoy it, but I think that it's a movie that needs to be watched. I think this is something that needs to be discussed and talked about for years and years to come.
I concur. I'm hesitant to give it 5 just because I do have some complaints with it as far as like it's an almost 3-hour movie. Doesn't
Mhm.
feel like 3 hours, and I wish that we had got more time with them.
Mm,
I wish that we had got an extra I wish it was an almost a 4-hour movie. Like, let me put it that way. Um,
yeah.
just to get a more insight into their family, and I wish that some of their family issues were not left as open to interpretation, as they are. But again, that's Linklater's vision. So who am I to really argue with that?
Mhm.
Um, I give it I give it 5, and that's rare for me.
Yeah.
That's very rare. It's very hard to get me to give a film 5 stars.
I do want to tag this here at the end, and I know that you and me have talked about this, but for anybody who has made it to this point in the podcast, if you have watched this film and you're like, that movie is absolutely cool, it's good, it's great, I would like to recommend the movie Captain Fantastic. Um, that is a movie that is less about like child growth, although that is like a very like key point into it, but it's more about children and our like education. It's about what we teach kids and the way that we teach them. Um, I know you and me have talked about this film. It is currently on Prime. Captain Fantastic is another just freaking banger. Um, and if you love Boyhood, you will love Captain Fantastic. And if you and your wife decide to watch that film, I would love to hop on here again and just chew on that film with you because I could talk about that film for freaking 10 hours.
Well, let's leave it out. Let's leave it up to the audience. How do you guys feel about us doing this a little more often? Where sometimes we, like Teo and I, set out to watch the same film and then just sit down for an hour and analytically dissect it, like we did for Boyhood. Um, if you guys listen out there enjoyed this episode, be sure to tell us about it. You can always comment on the teasers on TikTok or on the comment sections on on YouTube. There will be I'll put a poll on Spotify as well. So whatever platform you're listening on, give us your feedback on it and let us know that you want to see more like this. I think this is it's an interesting thing because our show is so rooted in just discussion about a lot of different things. Like we try not to
Mhm.
tie ourselves down, and I don't think I'd want to do this like every single episode we do choose a movie, but every now
Oh
and
yeah,
again, like you know, I it would be neat to choose a movie and we both watch it and all that. So um
yeah.
but yeah, I'm gonna end it here, guys. Thank you everyone for watching and let us know. Have a great week.
And good morning.
Teo will hopefully be back with more cigarettes and milk in the future. Hey, what a show! Teo and I really do love Boyhood, and we hope you do too. We'd like to thank everyone who's been listening along and would like to remind you to go ahead and follow Masters of Matinee on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Special thanks to this week's co-host, Teo the Terminurtle, who can be found on TikTok and Instagram at Terminurtle. Don't forget that all 4 Masters are now on Letterboxd. Come see what kind of movies we've been watching, and be sure to leave a comment and let us know that you're listening to the show. Their links can be found in the description. Remember to also follow me on TikTok and YouTube at JT the Talking Head. Thank you all so very much for listening to this awesome collaborative effort of 4 guys who just want to talk about the things they love, movies and physical media. Be sure to join us next week and every single week on Blues Day Tuesday. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next week.